he changed the system. So clearly he recognised that it wasn't working. But should he have known that from the beginning, or was it just, are we being too harsh on him, and actually the players just shit and just weren't up for it? Because ultimately they need to start games. And as I said at the beginning, Chelsea came as a train, and we just didn't look like we were ready as usual. Our players just don't seem ready mentally at the beginning of a game to start appropriately to put us on the front foot in big games like that. So maybe, all of that bullshit, don't worry about it. Conte's actually got it right, and you're probably rightly that the players should be able to adapt to the system, but they just need to kind of wake up.
Interestingly, after that match, Conte did say, I know he was stinging and hurt, as a number of people pointed out before, that he must have been embarrassed at his old workplace with that sort of performance. But he said it's not just a mentality issue. And from our point of view, it does look like an application and mentality point of view, but he's obviously, subtext to that is, a lot of the players just aren't good enough. Sure. Just don't have it within them to make that a change. And they haven't for him, they haven't for the previous manager. And he's got a realistic handle on it.
Yeah. And he has said, hasn't he? What I like about him is that, he said he had to do a review of the squad or whatever, and he's done that now. That's it. Decisions are made in his mind. He knows he knows who he's keeping. He knows who he wants to ship out. Decisions are made. They've started talking about, the fact that he's only on a very short contract. He's like, well, I'm happy with that. I need to justify my wages. I'm happy to extend my contract, but obviously there's an element of work that's required from the club in order for both parties to be happy. And one of those things will be that I've said we've got a squad of 36 or however many it's in the squad, and 12 of those players are not good enough. They need to go, and we need to get in these players, and that's what we need to do. And if the club do that over a period of time, if they say, right, well, yeah, we can get those 3 in this time, we'll get those 4 in, blah, 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 then he'll extend and he'll stay there for another 2 seasons or whatever. So, I find that's the thing I find interesting, and I've really found refreshing. And I think I've seen a lot of things on Twitter about people saying about him, how articulate he is and how clear and concise he is about intention, clarity of thought of how he wants the club or whatever to evolve. Can we, will we do that? Will we achieve it? And it's something that we'll discuss a little bit more when we talk about the transfer bit that we're going to hopefully manage to fit in. So with that in mind, because we've still got a few bits we want to crack on with, let's rattle through the Morecombe game. So Morecombe game yesterday, right? It's Monday. So yesterday, how many did you? Obviously, Jay, you didn't go, but Rich, were you there?
Yeah, I was there. Yeah.
Simon, did you manage to get there, Simon?
No, I didn't. I watched it on the. Unfortunately, I spent all my football tokens watching the mighty Boreham Wood on Saturday.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah. And that was a cracking game and result, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was brilliant. It was such a good time. It was such a nice time. I got a surprise ticket, kind of fairly lastminute.com, so I chose to go and watch that, and it was a fun afternoon out in the local town. Just watching that was really good fun. Really good fun.
Best not to dwell on that, because you beat Jay's local team, and he won't be he won't want to talk about that.
Not good. Not good.
Anyway, so moving on, glossing over that. Lee, were you at the game on Sunday? Were you? Did you go?
No. I managed to. See it was on there after the bullshit rumours that were all over Twitter.
Yeah, I don't want to talk to you. I'll I'll just talk to Rich, because Rich is the man. He was the only one that could be asked to turn up.
You told me proper fans watch it at home.
Proper fans.
I didn't even manage to do that, to be honest. So anyway, as I say, very quickly. So wholesale changes. Galini was in goal. Rodon comes in. Sessegnon, Wink starts. Lo Celso and Dembele, Hill, Dele. So players that are supposed to have talent, really. But this is our second 11, a second string. And I did, Rich. I don't know what the atmosphere was like in the game. I didn't. I was at my own match, and I had a vibration on my phone. I was on my watch, and I looked at the vibration, and I just laughed. And I've got a few Spurs people that are at the football with me. So one of them was on the subs bench. So I went and showed her, and she went like, "What the fuck?" And
it's the only response, really, isn't it?
Yeah. And then the Chelsea supporting people that were there were like, this is great. So you need to talk to me, because all I've heard is that for the first 70 minutes we were outplayed.
We were fucking atrocious. That goal, when it came, had been coming since the word dot. How they hadn't scored it a lot sooner, I don't know. We didn't put a team out on Sunday. We put 11 players out that most of them looked like they'd never met each other before. And I think it really is a key indication of what you were saying earlier about the gap in between our first 11 and the rest of the squad, because there was just no cohesion in that side at all. There was people passing to thin air, people falling over, players, turning 360, 720 degrees, looking for other players that weren't there. Rodon and the goalkeeper seemed to meet about halfway through the first half. They haven't ever seemed to acknowledge each other's existence before then. It was... To be honest with you, if the Morecombe fans hadn't been as loud as they were and kept our supporters a bit more occupied trying to, shout them down, the atmosphere probably would have got a lot more toxic.
Okay.
It was a pretty piss. They played every bit as well as they did on the Wednesday night before them. It really, really was dreadful to watch.
Typical gutless performance again. Typical gutless Tottenham performance. Dire.
So are they like, if Jamie, picking up on Rich's point? They're playing like 11 individuals on a pitch. So is that because they're kind of playing for themselves or their own individual what's the word? Things for themselves, for their own desire or whatever. Yeah, they're not. They're not really giving a fuck about the outcome for the team. They just want an outcome for themselves, really, rather than I don't know how to.
Well, I think there could be, potentially a couple of players there that probably don't give a flying fuck about what happens to the team or what the results are on the pitch. I don't know what's happened to Lo Celso's left leg, because it's just made of fucking jelly. He's got he can't get any power in the ball. He can't pass the ball. Then when he goes off to play for Argentina, he's absolutely amazing. And then obviously you had the NDombele issue where, he could not be fucked at all yesterday. He was just jogging around the pitch. He'd lose the ball and jog away in a similar fashion to that clip when Mourinho was in charge.
Yeah.
And you saw the clip of NDombele jogging back, and Mourinho's answer to that was, well, the guy with the ball was very, very quick. But yeah, I don't know. Those two players settled. In fact, they've clearly got bags of talent, but just don't seem to want to do anything with it. And again, typical gutless performance. And as Rich said, lack of cohesion, just a lack of anything, lack of understanding, lack of ability to even play football or read the game. It was just a typical game where you get a Premier League team that just get out muscled by lower league opposition that seemed a lot more organised. They knew how to defend. They knew how to, narrow the channels and, break us down on that. It was just incredibly frustrating, wasn't it? It was piss poor.
I think. So, watching the game from my point of view, I know I had a feeling we would win it, and you can argue a heavily rotated team is always going to struggle because they just don't know each other. But struggle is the thing that we seem to do a lot. We're struggling to break down teams constantly. It's a big issue with this, with us, and in terms of the lack of guile that we have in this team, no matter who we play. And even though we played some slightly more creative players like NDombele, Lo Celso, Kiel, Winks, we still could struggled to break a very, very average team down. And Galini, don't even fucking start me on him. I mean, he's not covered himself in glory, Paratici, is he, with that purchase. He is absolutely awful. I hope we send him back in January because he should never be near this team. He just isn't good enough. And you could sense, couldn't you? I mean, I again, in the WhatsApp thread I put on there, will they get booed at halftime? You just felt that was coming. I mean, I don't, I'm not a booer. I wouldn't boo myself, but it's just, you just felt the mood of the crowd was ready to give them stick. And then, of course, when NDombele just sort of walked off later on, like really sulked off, it just, that just ignited it again because people are just absolutely fed up. And then to have the ignominy of having to bring on the bloody cavalry to salvage that game. That was just a joke.
It is, but at least I guess at least they got the job done because, it could have been worse that we brought them on and we did fuck all. So I guess, at least they got the job done.
But we shouldn't have needed to have brung them on. We should they should be saved for Wednesday.
100%. And that was obviously the intention.
In that team.
That was obviously the intention from Conte, that he didn't want to have to, he'd have them on the bench as an insurance policy, but he didn't want to have to bring them on. Simon, do you think that the way obviously the way NDombele went off, and we've seen that all the abuse and all the reaction today, there's been pictures of the way that Dyer was like trying to actually knock him over with his stare today. So do you think, do we hope that that's the last we've seen of NDombele? Because as talented as he potentially is, he clearly doesn't give a shit. He's paid too much to really care, clearly enough. And I think he's probably had enough opportunities to prove that he deserves to be in that team now.
Yeah, I think he's just really. I agree with you. He clearly does has the talent. I think he's obviously just really unhappy, and he just doesn't want to. I'm not going to say that I think he doesn't like the Spurs or the fans or anything else like that. He's obviously just really unhappy and just doesn't want to be in England. Doesn't want to be in the club, and not because it is our club. I think he's just really unhappy, probably in the UK, and just wants to go somewhere else. So he's trying to force a move, I suppose, in that sense, and he will ultimately get it. And it's a shame because when you see him switched on, you see some of the stuff he's pulled off, as far and few and far as it's been between. It is unbelievable. And if he really had settled and was giving his, 100% or even 90%, frankly, he would he'd walk all over that pitch and do some amazing stuff because we've seen it. But I don't think it's a football thing. I think he's just unhappy here, and I think he just
he's tried to. He has tried to leave on more than one occasion. It's not like he hasn't. It's not like he's come out and declared his love for the club and that he's wanting to stay. He's tried to leave on more than one occasion, and Levy has managed to convince him to stay. So maybe that, in hindsight, I think has been a mistake, and we should have cashed in a lot earlier. And
nobody wants, you never want someone to stay in a job they're unhappy.
Pep,
either
I mean,
with or with the country or the culture or whatever it might well be.